Now, we've been doing some combining with most of our fanboys, especially it's definitely and but we're going to look a little bit more at combining with some other fanboys. Here's an example. Alexis will walk to the room. Rodarius will carry her. So, again, we're still going to keep our same rules here where we are not going to repeat anything. So, how would you combine this? Let's see. She's going to walk or be carried. So, already there, I kind of gave it away that we want to say or here, right? So, we want to use or here. It's one or two things. So, how will we combine it? Alexis will walk to the room or Rodarius will carry her. Did you see how the sentences really just stayed the same? Nothing really changed? Okay, don't make it hard. All we did was put or between the two sentences. Here's the one. The gas tank was empty. Mrs. Thomas filled it before she left. The gas tank was empty. Miss Thomas filled it before she left. Those seem like they're opposed and are going against each other. So, but of course, it's going to be the right one. And what do we simply do? Just combine these two sentences with but in the middle. What I want you to pay attention is that, do you see the comma and the fanboy? Remember, complete sentence. The gas tank was empty. Second sentence, Mrs. Thomas filled it before she left. So just remember, guys, that whenever you are combining, now, subordinate conjunctions have hunted us a little bit this year, but we still have those on our back wall. You should have these written down. Do you remember words like before and although and after and even though, unless, as if, until, because? These subordinate conjunctions give us complex sentences. So we have been making either compound predicates or compound subjects or compound sentences. But guys, are you ready? Now we're going to take two sentences, put them together, and create complex sentences. And the only way to have a complex sentence is with one of our subordinate conjunctions. Okay, so here we go. Look at these two. I love to sleep. I rarely get to rest. Now, look at these two. They seem to almost contradict each other. So you've got to go up here and look at these subordinate conjunctions and decide which one of these subordinate conjunctions would show a relationship that was against each other, kind of like but. Take a minute and think about that. For this relationship, you're going to use the word although. So take a minute to write that down and let yourselves know that although it's going to be a situation that seems to be opposing. So although I love to sleep, I rarely get to rest. Again, notice the location of although. The sentences didn't change. All I did was put although at the beginning. Remember, a subordinate conjunction can go either at the first, it can go in front of the first sentence or between the two sentences. Here's another one. The paper flew across the room. The wind blew. Now look at this situation. I have some paper flying across the room, and it had something to do with the wind blowing. So whenever something happens because of something else, of course, that's a cause and effect relationship. There's only one conjunction, or one of the best conjunctions to use, of course. There are actually two. Because or when works, we're used to using because. So when you go to do this, because the wind blew, the paper flew across the room. Okay? Or when the wind blew, the paper flew across the room. But notice the location of the words because and when. It's right before the first sentence. Okay? And notice that once we make this the first word, look what comes here. Voila, the comma becomes here. So when, and now we have blue. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Let me show you that. Tralexis drank her water. The waiter brought out her food. Okay, so what's going on here? Tralexis drank her water. The waiter brought out her food. Well, it seems here, what transition is going to work here that she's doing two things at one time? The word is while. If two things are going on at the same time, you want to use while, okay? So while Tralexis drank her water, the waiter brought out her food. Okay, two things are going on here. And I know you're thinking, well, can I use because? but because doesn't fit here. Okay, it's not a cause and effect relationship. You don't have two opposing things that you would need to use although. So this lesson is going to take a little bit of thought for you to really understand and know when to use your transitions. Just a reminder at this point, remember the placement of your subordinate conjunction does matter. Remember that it goes in front of either sentence. So don't try to make it the last word. It goes in front of either sentence. Okay, now's that time that you're going to want to have out some paper. What I want you to do is to write all of this down. I want you to combine A and B, combine C and D, combine E and F with a subordinate conjunction. So don't try to use a fanboy like and or but. I want to see you combining these with when or since or even, as if or although. Try to keep the ones we've already used that you know now, although, because, when. All right? So this is what you're going to have to turn into class. So you're going to make sure that you pause now and that you do this. All right, hopefully you have those. Let's go to the next slide. Now, subordinate at the end. So far, you've only seen me use examples where we put the subordinate conjunction as the first word. And we know when that happens, we create a comma. Well, let's try to put some subordinate conjunctions before the second sentence. So here's your example. Jackson ate the hamburger. His friend Libby is a vegetarian. So we want to think of a subordinate conjunction that may go against each other. What one did we just say? Although. Very good. Let me give you another one that I want you to try that also can be substituted with although, and that is even though. Okay? So, where are we trying to put this again? That's right, before the second sentence. So, Jackson ate the hamburger even though his friend Libby is a vegetarian. Okay? Did you see what we did here? All we did was put it before the second sentence. So I just wanted you guys to see some examples of that. Let's keep moving. Now, one of the things I want you to notice here, and I don't know if you noticed it, and you probably have a question. Let me get my highlighter. That comma. So we're going to take just a minute and do what I call a sidebar here. For honors kids, it's important that you know about that comma, when and when not to use essential and non-essential. So if you want to get these notes down, you will need this. If the essential means you need it, water, food, shelter, you have to have it. You cannot live without water. You cannot live without shelter, okay? Non-essential is just that, not necessary. You don't have to have Coca-Cola. You don't have to live in a mansion, okay? You don't have to have Jordans. So you have to think about what's essential and non-essential. Well, why is that important? Here it is. Let me pull up the highlighter here. It's important to know whether or not the second sentence is necessary or not. If that second sentence is necessary, then you do not use a comma, because commas mean, hey, I can snatch this out. I don't need it. All right. So if the second sentence is not necessary, if it is necessary and you have to have it, do not use a comma. But if the second sentence is not necessary, or if it's non-essential, let's highlight that. So if the second sentence is not necessary or not needed, we're going to use a comma. That comma lets us know, hey, we can snatch this out. Commas act as hooks. Wrap your finger around that comma, snatch it out and everything with it to let us know, hey, I really don't need that. All right, let's practice. Jackson ate the hamburger even though his friend Libby is a vegetarian. Now, let's look at this for just a second. Let's notice here, I underline this. His friend Libby is a vegetarian. Jackson ate the hamburger. If we put a period there, did the meaning of the sentence change? No, it didn't. Jackson still ate the hamburger. So that means the fact that his friend Libby is a vegetarian is not necessary. So essential and non-essential. Essential answers to questions. They tell you when things happen, why, or how they happen. Now check this out. Paula can't go to the store because it is raining. Now, I want first to take a moment and let's just dissect this for just a minute. So I'm going to pull up my pen. All right. All right, so I've squiggly lined the first sentence. Paula can't go to the store. The second sentence is it is raining. So these two sentences have been combined with because. All right. Remember, we've been working on putting two sentences together. Now, here's the trick. Is there a comma in front of because? No, it's not. So when we don't put the comma, that means, hey, we really need this. You know why we have to keep because it's raining? Because it answers. Okay. Essential versus non-essential. Remember that essential tells us when something happened, why it happened, or how it happened. The train will arrive before we get there. All right, so let's dissect this. Let me pull out my pen here. So I've dissected this for you. The first sentence is the train will arrive. The second sentence is we get there. These two sentences have been combined with before. Now I have to ask myself, do these words before we get there tell me anything? Yes, they do. The train will arrive and it tells me when it's coming before we get there. Because what? The train could come afterwards. It could come 2 hours, 2 years, who knows? But it lets us know when the train will. Now, can you decide? I would like for you to participate with me now. Robert will arrive before we have dinner. So write this down and I want you to pay attention to how it's been dissected. First sentence is Robert will arrive. Second sentence is we have dinner. They have been combined with the word before. Now, does this before we have dinner answer to the questions why, how, or when? Does it answer any of those questions? Yes, it tells you when Robert's going to arrive, so that's essential. We don't need a comma. All right? Sometimes knowing when and when not to use a comma can be confusing, but just remember if I need it, leave it be. Don't you mess with my sentence. The dog walked wearily down the street because it was tired. Now, here's what I want you to do. Take a second and I want you to underline these two sentences and circle the conjunction for me. Did you do something like this? The dog walked really down the street, first sentence. The second sentence, it was tired. Now notice what do you have here? We have this comma here to let us know that it's not essential whether or not we know if the dog is tired or not. Okay? It's not going to change the meaning of the sentence. We're going to leave it be. Here's your last one. Lydia can't go to the park if she is sick. All right, take a minute, write this sentence down, and see can you separate it. Now, I want you to write down these 5 sentences. This is something else that you're going to bring to class. Now, if you pay attention, you'll have no problem deciding whether or not these sentences are essential or non-essential. So you're going to write down each sentence and out to the side, tell me if it's essential or non-essential. Be ready to have this when you get to class. All right, hopefully you have these words down and we'll be going over these answers in class. Now, since we're still talking about essential and non-essential and combining sentences, let's talk about relative clauses. Now, we talked about this a while ago when we did pronouns. That would have been back in L111 and L112. So what I want you to do is write down relative clause, and I want you to highlight these words, that, which, and who. Because all of the words that we're going to be looking at, they're all relative pronouns, and they can be anywhere in a sentence. We've talked about subordinate conjunctions either being the first word, before the first sentence, or before the second sentence. Well, we're going to be looking at subordinate conjunctions, relative clauses, creating relative clauses, and they too can be essential or non-essential. So take a minute here to think, what does essential mean? It's right, it's necessary. That means I have to have it in the sentence. I cannot use a comma. Non-essential means not necessary. I can put a comma there because what does that comma act as? That's right, I'm going to wrap my finger around that comma and snatch all that out because, hey, I don't need it. So let's look at this. Montreal, who is a football player, is a good student. Now, we've created a relative clause here because we use which word? Who? Who is a football player? Let's look at the next one. The dog that chased the car panted heavily. I voted for Willisha who ran for class secretary. Now, I want you to notice here just examples of what it would look like to use one of these relative clauses in a sentence. Again, we're paying attention to whether they are essential or non-essential, and it pretty much follows the same rules. The comma, non-essential. Excuse me, the comma is non-essential. I can take it out. I still have a sentence. Essential, I need it in there. I don't want to mess with my comma. So, what do you notice? That says who. So who means non-essential. I'm going to need commas, right? But what did we just say about that? That is essential, no commas. So keep that in mind. Let's go back to that slide. I really want you to write this down so you'll have this in your notes. Which, non-essential, use a comma. Wrap my finger, snatch it out. That, essential, do not use a comma. So pause that and write that down. Now, what did all that have to do with combining sentences? You ready? Here we go. Write these two sentences down. The boy ate the pickles. The boy hadn't eaten in days. The boy ate the pickles. The boy hadn't eaten in days. Now, are you ready? What if I told you this? Make the first sentence into a relative clause. The first sentence. Well, what words create relative clauses? Go back to that slide or look in your notes. Did you find it? Do you remember the words? Go back in your notes. Look, you remember those words that make the relative clauses? Who, you remember? So hopefully you remember it's words like that, which, and who. So boy here refers to a person, so we have to use who. So instead of saying the boy, notice that we substitute with who. Everything else stays the same. So instead of saying the boy, we're going to just say who ate the pickles. Now do you think you can put that with the second sentence? Take a minute and try. So once we got rid of the boy and changed it to who, let's see, can you do it? Where would this go? Who ate the pickles? Well, it was the boy. So ate the pickles needs to be next to the boy. The boy who ate the pickles hadn't eaten in days. Now, I chose not to put commas here. Do you agree? Yes, because we need to know which boy. Was it Justin? Misha wants to borrow the sweater. The red sweater is Inez's sweater. Now, what if I said, let's make the second sentence the relative clause? Let's think about this for just a minute. Now, we have a repetition again, and we talked all about repetition. The red sweater is Inez's sweater. So we're going to, this red sweater that we mentioned in the first sentence is Inez's sweater. So watch this. So we scratched out the red sweater in the second sentence because we already mentioned it and we don't like to repeat ourselves. But we're going to have to turn this sentence into a relative clause. So either are we going to use that, which, or who? Well, it's not a person, so there's no way we're going to use who. So when we say that or which, well, we've got to decide, is it essential or non-essential? Think about it. Will the meaning of the sentence change whether or not we know it's Inez's sweater? No. We just need to know that Misha wants to borrow the red sweater. So which is Inez's sweater? So notice that we replaced the subject, the red sweater, with the relative pronoun which. Just like we did in the last part. The chicken was chased by a weasel. The chicken ran out of the hen house. Looking at these, A, B, or C, tell me what you think the answer is. Well, if you've been paying a little bit of attention, you know this whole lesson has been about combining with relative clauses. So there's only one sentence. only one sentence had that, which, or who in it. So what did we do? We took the chicken ran out of the hen house. The chicken was chased by the weasel. Which chicken? The one that was chased by the weasel. So instead of so again, we scratch out the subject, replace it with that, and simply say the chicken that was chased by the weasel.